Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Is welcome you once again on this Wednesday evening talk with Inayet Wadee. It is on Wednesday evenings as we unpack global and local political dynamics on the broadcast with our panel of guests this evening. Now, tonight our focus is going to be on the political landscape in the West African region. And Africa, obviously, a huge interest from right across the entire world on what takes place in Africa. Now, we've seen a lot with regards to West Africa. In fact, recently there was this whole issue surrounding the Sahel region standing up to the world, and where we saw the heads of states of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger meeting in a first summit of the Alliance of Sahel States. Now, these are three countries with regards to a number of issues. And we know that there has been a lot of focus. There's been a lot of talk about democracy. There's been a lot of talk about peace, about governance in the West African region. At the same time, there is talk about the challenge of stability and security in West Africa, and just looking at the history and understanding the crisis of democracy in West Africa. Now, here we raise a question mark. Democracy under whose definition? Under what definition is democracy defined in Africa, in West Africa in particular, which we are talking? And we've seen a lot about talking about West Africa continuing to slide towards instability. There is talk about coups, political instability in the region. All of that saying that political stability in West Africa is in a perilous state. But taking all of that into account, looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly of West Africa's political issues, and we've seen it over a period of time. And this is the reason why we are focusing this evening on the West African region. We have got a panel that has assembled, and we are waiting for two of our panelists to join us. Then they will be joining us shortly. Dr. Mukhtar, Imam of the Al-Muhibbah Open University in Abuja. Ayesha, Kajee, who is Africa Asia Dialogue. She's quite an expert. And we also have got Dr. Ismail Buchanan from the University of Rwanda with us this evening. I see Ayesha is coming on screen as well, and so is Dr. Ismail Buchanan, who's already on. Dr. Ismail, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dr. Ismail, assalamu alaikum. I think we are having a slight problem with regard to sound with Dr. Ismail. Perhaps if you could just log in and log out again to try and resolve that issue. I see, there we go. Dr. Ismail, can you hear me? Your mic is muted. No, I think we are having a slight problem with Dr. Ismail. Ayesha, assalamu alaikum to you.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sorry, I was also having technical difficulties. Can you hear and see me now, Brother Inayet?
Well, I can hear you, but I can't see you for some reason or the other. Your cam is off. Perhaps you could try and turn on your cam. But if we are having a problem, we could go with audio. It's not a problem, Ayesha.
Okay, I'll try again, inshallah. I see
there we
that.
Go.
Okay.
Right. Okay, Ayesha, while we're waiting for Dr. Ismail Buchanan and also Dr. Mukhtar Imam to join us, we will obviously start off in looking at the West African region. Obviously, very, very interesting dynamics that are playing out in the West African region, particularly when we see what has taken place around 2 weeks ago, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger meeting in the summit, and also at the same time, this whole issue surrounding, coups and instability in the West African region. There's just so much talk at this point in time. But these are obviously interesting dynamics that are unfolding because when one looks at, the leadership of these three countries, after having met, and I've just been reading up a lot on some of the leadership, particularly Ibrahim Traore as well, So they are obviously looking at West Africa and also looking at some of the lessons for the rest of Africa. We are seeing a new breed of leadership emerging in that region that could possibly change the dynamics of the region?
Absolutely. I think we are seeing a new type of leadership emerge. Whether that leadership is actually going to be good for the region or not is, of course, questionable, given that all three leaders, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, have all risen to power through coup d'etats. Whether those coup d'etats were supported by the citizenry or not is not the issue at stake, but it's the subversion of what we have traditionally recognized as democratic principles that is troubling, to say the least.
Well, certainly, Aisha. I see Dr. Ismail Buchanan has joined us. Dr. Ismail, Assalamu alaikum. If you could unmute your mic, please. Dr. Ismail? I think Dr. Ismail has frozen. Possibly there may be signal issues in that part of the world. Perhaps we should try and get hold of Dr. Ismail on an audio, perhaps just because from a bandwidth perspective, I think possibly it is creating somewhat of a problem. But Aisha, I think while we are trying to sort out Dr. Ismail Buchanan, I think, as you mentioned, these are leaders that came in with a coup, and whether that is good or whether that is not bad. But from what I've been reading up as well, particularly looking at Ibrahim Traore, I've found that, a lot of people seem to be holding him in high regard. Obviously, this is someone who is brave, who is courageous. He has made statements that very few African leaders have made as well. So it does appear as if, with this new breed of leadership, young leadership, particularly on an African continent where we find that there are many, many people. In fact, a large part of the African continent are young people. And this alone actually starts to tell us that there is some sort of a pattern emerging in terms of the type of leadership that possibly Africa needs.
Yes. Look, Mr. Traore is fairly young, still in his 30s. He was in the military hierarchy. He was a captain. And his predecessor was also a fairly young person, President Damiba, who was a lieutenant colonel. He became the world's youngest head of state in September 2022 when Mr. Traore ousted Mr. Damiba. And he had also come to the presidency, Mr. Damiba, that is, through a coup that same year, in January of that year. And when Mr. Traore, took power, took control, he said that Mr. Damiba had failed to tackle the problems that he had promised to tackle, chief amongst them the perennial problem of insurgency from militant groups in that region. So there are a lot of armed groups and a lot of proliferation of small arms sales, including small arms that date back, to the era of the Cold War in this region, when many of the proxy wars of both the Soviet Union and the Western Bloc, particularly the United States, were fought through proxies in places like West Africa. So there's a lot of small arms circulating in that region. And as I said, some of them are really old arms and armaments, but of course still in somewhat working condition. And this has been a problem because every so often you get some militant group or other forming either on the basis of a professed political issue or on the basis of ethnicity or language or regional affiliation, whatever, is the sine qua non of the day, basically. And these militant groupings then terrorize local populations.
Yes, Aisha, I think Aisha is frozen as well for some reason or the other. There seems to be a few gremlins in the system as well. So we're going to try and see if we can't get Aisha back as well, perhaps on audio once again. I think the key issue here is with the bandwidth and video based. Sometimes it does create a problem. So we need to apologize for that. But let's try and see if we can't get Dr. Ismail Buchanan back on, perhaps on an audio and a better with a better signal. I see Aisha is logging in again as well. So somewhere along the line, there seems to be a bit of a problem. Aisha, I see you back with us.
Am I back with you now? Can you hear me?
Yes, 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 Aisha. Yeah, I think let's stick to audio because we seem to be having a problem with bandwidth. So please, you can continue.
Sure. So, as I was saying, that the previous leader in Burkina Faso, Mr. Damiba, had also come to power in January 2022 through a coup, and then he was replaced by another coup spearheaded by Mr. Traore and some of the other senior members of the military, on the basis that Mr. Damiba had failed to really deal with the problem of insurgency, which he had promised to do. And this is an area that's been racked with
Well, I see we have lost Aisha once again. And yeah, I'm wondering whether it's one of those evenings that we're going to be having, but hopefully we'll try and see what we can do. I know Dr. Ismail Buchanan is also battling to basically connect for some reason or the other, but we will continue. I see Dr. Ismail is back with us, and hopefully on audio. Dr. Ismail, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Ismail. I think, yes, I would suggest that obviously we continue. Let's see how it goes with the video. Otherwise, we'll have to do it on audio. But we are seeing you right now. We welcome you. We thank you for taking time out with us this evening right here on Salam Media. And again, we are focusing on West African politics and just looking at it from your side and looking at the changing dynamics of West African politics. Aisha alluded to a number of issues with regard to whether it is good, whether it is bad, particularly when one looks at the latest developments with regard to Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and they forming this alliance of Sahel states. But also whether it is good, whether it is bad. At the end of the day, just your analysis and your reading into what is playing out politically in that part of the world.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank for my sister Ayesha, who was trying to deliberate more on the issues of this dynamic in these Western countries. To me, I have two perspectives. I will start by, can you hear me very well? No problem now?
Yes.
Wonderful. So on one side, I would say that I did appreciate for, especially when it comes to Burkina Faso. Let me focus much on Burkina Faso first of all. Africa has been tremendous with this kind of colonization and so on. But when you look at what these Burkina Faso, and even the West countries, especially Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and so on, by kicking out those so-called international interference, the country like France,
Brother Inayet, can you hear me?
Like the United States of America.
Yes, Sister Ayesha. In fact, I got Dr. Ismail on as well.
Okay, lovely.
Okay, so when you look at what is happening now, you can say that a lot of change have been transformation within African continent, and of course, I think we have already started. We have already started to see the impact, which may be positive. Of course, on the side of negative as well, because this is not going to be perfect 100% as it has been planned. But let me start from this young gentleman, the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore, when he made the two coups d'etat in 2022. Of course, he did not do it alone. He was supported with other officers ascended to the presidential through the coup d'etat. Even though I don't appreciate to have a coup d'etat, but at least sometimes it requires to make sure that change can happen. Otherwise, they have supposed to remove this Damiba, who was in office, by accusing him that he was unable to tackle the issue of the worst issue of insurgency. So if you look at how this young vibrant, how it's started, and let's look at international arena or how it's shining, I would say that he appealed, during the Russia and African summit. I hope you remember that was July 2023, if I'm not mistaken. I look at how this guy came with a military uniform, with red bellets, and tactic even within his speeches. You can see how the man is confident, or he was even confident, how he dressed up. When he talk about Africa during the Russia African summit. So to me, he managed to earn what I can call a plaudits, a praise from African people, because you can even equal to him like a Sankara during his period of Sankara period. So I like the man when during his speech, he tried to come out with what he say. Let me quote him. He used the word like, we Africa head of states, we must stop acting like a marionette. So, the way he mentioned marionette, to me, it was like most of African presidents, this kind of summit, Japan, USA, Europeans summit, most of the time you found out Africa are always behind. So he was trying to advise his colleague, his counterpart, like other Africans, that we need to stop dancing one another to make sure that we just praise the imperialist. Otherwise, we have to do something. That is the positive side of this gentleman when he started to do this kind of thing. But of course, on one side, we appreciate, because if I'm looking at his agenda in transformation of his own country, like a Burkina Faso, he promised to fight and to restore the country, territorial integrity, which really is trying his best by kicking out these French troops. He promised also to defend and to reorganize the defense and security force, which we're still waiting, even though he has promised to buy some equipment, in the military equipment and so on. All this, I will say that it's a positive thing on his side. And at the same time, he tried to include the new volunteers. I think he managed to come out with 90,000 new volunteers, military thing, to defend his own country. That is something really we need from our African leaders, especially when it comes to the security of Africa. But of course, time will tell us if he's going to successfully accomplish this kind of thing. But if you look at this gentleman as a head of state, to me, really, I would say that I was still having faith in him, looking at what he's trying to do on behalf of these Western countries, especially look at this alliance come together with the Niger, Mali. I'm not supporting that they have to go out or they have to pull up from a course, because we are talking about regional integration as far as we are talking about the unity of Africa. But let's start from home. Let's start from our own internal problem. If Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso can manage to come out together, maybe 5 to 10 years, pull up again to call this Nigeria, Ghana to come together to form one unity. That is where we are going. That's where we are heading. And I think I agree with you, Mr. Wadee, when you talk about democracy in Africa. This is a sort of democracy. Let people express themselves for what they want, because this is what all about democracy. So, of course, I still have to beg, because I believe in God, I believe in time. So we need to pray for him to be successful in what he's really want to achieve as a young gentleman of less than 35 years. This is really something we need to appreciate. Even we have had in Africa, people take long terms, I don't want to mention any country, but people take longer for their and become even some dictators and authoritarian thing. Let's see what this gentleman is going to change in transforming this African continent. I think he has a good will, so we need to support him as Africans, but there is a lot of things he need to come out from the word of mouth to the concrete action so that he can make forward Africa. We are talking about the 2063 and look at where we are heading for. This is what I can add when you look at what the gentleman is trying to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Dr. Ismail. Ayesha, I know I heard you laughing, obviously, at some of the comments that Dr. Ismail had made as well. But again,
Well,
just
laughing with
coming
them,
to
I
this whole
think, Brother
question
Inayet,
surrounding
laughing with them, not necessarily at them, but yes, I have been a little bit amused because there have been many comparisons with Mr. Traore, comparing him to Thomas Sankara, who also, by the way, came to power through a coup. Certainly, he has a similar kind of charisma, as Brother Ibrahim has pointed out, but his charisma aside and his defiance of Western norms and standards in terms of dress code and saluting the military, etc. aside, the charisma has to be translated into action, and that is yet to be seen. By the way, he's not under 35, he is now 36 years of age. And he is still, one of the youngest leaders ever in Africa and indeed around the world. At present, I think he is the youngest. So he's got youth on his side, he's got charisma on his side, but whether he can translate rhetoric like stop dancing like marionettes to the tune of the West, or, we need to stop being imperialist puppets per se, whether he can actually translate that into action will remain to be seen. We've seen that all three countries under discussion here today have reduced
Yes, I think Ayesha, again, we seem to be having a slight problem with Ayesha as well. We're losing Ayesha from time to time. And I think what Ayesha was saying, obviously, was very, very interesting in terms of the three countries. And, I don't know whether Ayesha is back with us. Ayesha, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly,
Ayesha,
Brother Inayet. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I think we're just losing you from time to time, actually. And, you were talking about all three countries and you were talking about reduced. And this is where basically we lost you. So if you could just continue from there, please, Ayesha.
Yes. Well, I was saying that all three countries have reduced their dependence on the West, particularly have kicked out the French and the Americans, from their territories. And that will not go unpunished in international relations terms, nor will their pursuance. All three countries have pursued closer ties with Russia. So they're essentially pursuing a look east policy. And that's not going to go unpunished by the West, by the US particularly, and by France, their former colonizer. So, I think we're going to see perhaps new tariffs and taxes imposed on these three countries. We're going to perhaps see some sanctions. We're going to see also, possibly visa restrictions on all three countries in addition to what currently exists. And we're also going to see how the withdrawal of these three countries and their alliance into this association or alliance of Sahel states is going to impact ECOWAS, which itself was not a very effective regional bloc when it came both to regional integration in terms of economic and political integration, as well as in terms of maintaining peace and stability in the region. Because as I was saying earlier, what you have essentially in the region is a proliferation of small arms dating back to the Cold War era. And therefore, it becomes very easy for small militant armed groups to take control of certain regions, terrorize the civilian population based on whatever their ideology is purported to be. And I say it's purported because many of these small insurgent groups purport to be based loosely around religion or tribe or ethnicity or linguistic affiliation, etc. But in many cases, they become pawns for extractive energies, for extracting resources from these countries, from these regions, by complicit and corrupt multinational corporations.
Yes, Aisha. And I think let's just bring Dr. Ismail back into the discussion. Now, Dr. Ismail, I think what is also important to understand is, we spoke about a Western-style democracy on the African continent, or imposed on the African continent. The question is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Sometimes, perhaps, when you look at leadership, when you look at Burkina Faso, for example, and what you've spoken about Ibrahim Traore, a coup may be a good thing, because at the end of the day, it is about what the overwhelming majority of people want. They want their interests to be served. They want their country's resources to satisfy their own needs. At the end of the day, they want to say that we want to grapple with our own problems ourselves. We need to be free to solve our own problems without external interference. Now, all of this taken into account, again, looking at Western-style democracy and how that is actually imposed, together with foreign interference. In the case of Burkina Faso, we know of the French interference preventing political sovereignty of the country as well. And we've seen this happen over and over again right across the entire African continent.
Absolutely, you are right, and I think I support what Ayesha, my sister Ayesha, is talking about. I hope you can hear me very well. I'm supporting what my sister Ayesha was talking about. But on one side, we need to be optimistic. Africa, it is time to leave out those kind of pessimistic, because if we don't want to protect our issue in Africa, then there is nothing we can do. I think this is one example of Burkina Faso. This is one example of Mali. This is an example of Rwanda. So I think what we have to do, my sister Ayesha is going to agree with me, and I think let's come from the word of mouth to the concrete action, because enough is enough with
Brother Inayet, I seem to have lost Brother Ibrahim's audio.
Yes, I've lost him too as well. Perhaps, Aisha, you could just continue from what, obviously the issues that I had raised on, sometimes a coup may be even better than a Western-style democracy that is imposed. And again, it is what the people of Africa want. It is what the countries want. It is what the leadership in Africa want. And perhaps, just a comment from your side on, whether it may be good or bad.
Well, I think coups in general are not a good thing for democracy, for true democracy. But whether we've had true democracy as opposed to just superficial electoral democracy throughout much of West Africa, if nowhere else in Africa, is also a moot point, because we've seen that electoral democracy, as it has played out in multi-party terms in various countries on the continent, has often been subverted to the extractive needs and desires and aims of big multinational corporations and of Western countries in general, of capitalist countries in general. So, there are many who would argue that democracy as we have seen it in West Africa has not worked to the advantage of West Africans themselves. And in that case, when we have a leader like Mr. Traore, who comes in with an avowed intention to transition to a civilian government, who has shown incredible bravery, as he did when he was part of the UN mission to Mali, he has shown, much bravery and courage, according to the military record in Timbuktu. in Mali, and he's young, he's dynamic, he's charismatic, as we said. What remains to be seen, of course, is whether he'll be able to translate charisma into action. Now, we saw, a similar charisma 30 years ago with the then young, fairly young Paul Kagame of Rwanda. And yet Mr. Kagame has become perhaps one of the most repressive presidents on the continent in terms of freedom of the media, in terms of true multi-party democracy, true political competition. He's remained in power for almost 30 years. He has claimed he's got more than 98% of the vote, but that is within a very repressive domestic polity. Now, whether Mr. Traore can do what Mr. Kagame did in terms of uniting the country, in terms of building an economically prosperous Burkina Faso in the way that Mr. Kagame was able to build a fairly economically prosperous Rwanda, and yet still allow for political competition, still allow for a free and independent press, for freedom of expression, for freedom of the media, it remains to be seen. It's a tough call for a region, let alone a country, but a region as a whole that has not known political stability since the beginning of the first wave of independence in Africa in the 1950s. So, as I say, it's not an easy job. It's an uphill task, particularly given what we know will be ongoing interference from outside forces, be they Western forces or Eastern ones. You're going to have in this region lots of meddling from outside if it is allowed, and it possibly will be allowed because these countries will need assistance, both financial and technical assistance from more experienced partners. The partner they're currently looking toward is, of course, Russia. And of course, that also has implications for the many, many mercenary activities that have been rife in this region, particularly Russia's Wagner Group, which used to have very close ties with the Putin administration, but has now become very acrimonious towards the Putin administration. So you've got a lot of different factors in play, all of them contributing to the security, or rather the political insecurity in the region.
Yes, Ayesha. But also, I think what is important to understand, Ayesha, is what we are seeing with these countries is somewhat of a departure. I see Dr. Ismail Buchanan is here, and I'll ask Dr. Ismail Buchanan to comment on this, where we're talking about the departure from subordination, Dr. Ismail, where we've seen many a time, we've seen a trend developing or evolving over a period of time, where you see deep frustration in a lot of these countries with a whole host of problems, largely associated with the interventions of foreign countries like France, for example. They've created many a dangerous situation on the African continent, in West Africa in particular, and also at the same time looking at how financially these countries have actually benefited from Africa by manipulation. They created infrastructure to benefit Europe even more than the African continent. So these are frustrations that have crept into West Africa, into the political landscape, and also into the masses. And this is the reason why these have resulted in these coups d'etats in West Africa and some of the other African countries.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. And, before Brother Ibrahim responds to that, I also want to say that many of the previous leaders in countries like Gabon, for example, with the notorious, Omar Bongo, really, those so-called leaders were really puppets of the West who enriched themselves at the expense of their people. But that is not to say that the emergence of a leader like Mr. Traore will not be subject to the same temptations, shall we say. And that remains to be seen. And that is where the litmus test will come, whether Mr. Traore will succumb to those greed impulses, whether they are dangled before him by Western nations or by Eastern ones such as Russia.
Yes, Dr. Ismail, would you like to come in? Dr. Ismail, you live? Yes. Unfortunately, Dr. Ismail, we definitely are having a major problem, and really we need to apologize to our listeners, our viewers. Dr. Ismail is out in Rwanda, and possibly there could be some issues with regard to signal strength, and hopefully we'll see if we can't just get him purely on an audio line. But Ayesha, just to continue, and I think what is important also to understand when you look at Ibrahim Traore, one of the comments that he had made is he spoke about imperialists seeing Africa as an empire of slaves, and that they believe that Africa belongs to them, our land belongs to them, our subsoils belong to them, and all of this. At the end of the day, he speaks about Niger, about the uranium that lights up Europe, but he says our streets remain dark. And this, he said, is no change. And I think this is the reason why these statements are made. But again, what is interesting for me is to see an African leader come out so courageous, so bold, to actually make these statements, Ayesha, which we've seen very few leaders in the recent past actually make, and not taking on the likes of Europe, not taking on the likes of the West for what they are, for who they are, and for what they've done to the African continent.
Brother Inayet, can you hear me, see me?
Yes, Ayesha.
Okay, sorry, I had a moment of dead silence there. So I think we've lost Brother Ismail, but I was just saying, I was being a little bit provocative because I know Brother Ismail's from Rwanda, and I was being a bit provocative in the hope that he would respond to my comment about how Mr. Kagame himself came to power under a similar wave of populism as Mr. Traore, and has unfortunately, during his almost 30-year-long rule, proven that populism does not necessarily translate into real democracy, because he has ruled with an iron fist. He has, been very, very intolerant of political competition, yet he has been surprisingly and laudably very, very successful in growing Rwanda's economy and in unifying the country. One must give Mr. Kagame that even while criticizing the lack of true multi-partyism and political competition, as well as the lack of freedom of expression and freedom of the media in Rwanda. So, one can't help making these comparisons, particularly at a time when Rwanda has just come out of an election.
Yes, in fact, we will ask Dr. Ismail to comment on the election as well. And what we will do is, I see Dr. Ismail is back with us, and I will ask Dr. Ismail to comment.
Yeah, I hope
Dr.
you can
Ismail,
hear me now.
Yes, I think it's better if we
me?
stick to audio. If you could stick to audio, please, and we will then continue.
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead, Dr. Ismail.
Good. I think what Sister Ayesha is talking about, that's true. That's true. And this gentleman Traore has to be ready to be criticized. Of course, it's taken a long time for President Kagame as well to be to put Banyarwanda where they are now. So in terms of human rights, it has been criticized for so many years. But we make sure that whatever criticism, you take it in the positive way of making sure that how do you turn this kind of criticism into positive way of dealing with the issues. This is what Rwandese has done. So today, I think Traore is being accused on his sides by political parties that are complaining that he doesn't allow the dialogue. So he has to open up the door for those political parties, to dialogue. But how do you do that? You do that by making sure that security, you make sure that security is under control. You make sure you boost the economy of your country. You make sure you earn more from the political support, especially. We have 11 political parties. They are free and fair election. And I think Sister Ayesha agree with me. We are just coming now from the election. But what we are dealing with by Kagame warning 99 2015, that is how Rwandese has expressed in terms of democracy. This is what we call it free and fair election in Rwanda. So, Mr. Traore,
is it really free and fair when you've imprisoned or exiled or exterminated senior opposition figures? That is the real question.
Ayesha, that is what you hear from. That is what we hear from other people, from media, from social media, from YouTube.
Brother Ibrahim, I've been in Rwanda. I've experienced the lack of voice there for myself.
Let me explain this to make sure even Traore will learn from us. Number one, I will agree with the Traore. He doesn't allow anyone who want to put Burkina Faso under over control of France, United States of America, or anyone. If that is some Burkina Faso as a Burkina Faso did that, then is the Mr. Traore to stop that. Do you agree with me that if he's going to do? Of course, he doesn't have to kill anybody. He doesn't want. He can dialogue. He can do in peaceful way. But if you go beyond putting you in the jail because you won't allow, because we are more corrupted as a Burkina Faso, who want these people to interfere? So if you put him in the jail, is it Traore doing something bad to his own country? I don't give a damn to someone who's going to criticize me.
Let me turn that on its head.
Yes,
let me turn that on its head.
Let's now come to Rwanda. Look at what happened to this Hotel Rwanda person, this Rusesabagina. This person, when I take an example in Rwanda, he went and lied that he's the one who stopped the genocide. He's the one who saved the hotel, the 2,000 people. No, he was not. Let me tell you, my uncle was part of that hotel. We have the fact. No, this guy went, he marketed himself, and he was behind this FDR, those who are insurgents, who are military with these army groups in DRC. He was the man who behind that. So are you telling me, if this man came back to Rwanda, he has been involved in this kind of part of genocide, are we going to allow him to then to say, pretend that he's a savior of Rwanda? No, I don't give a damn again. If the United States support him, this so-called big country support him, he has to be punished of what he did. So what I'm trying to say, Traore need to make sure anyone who does wrong thing has to be pursued by the justice in fair way to make sure the justice can do his job. This is what we are doing. Last but not least, Ayesha, if in 1994, after the RPF stopped the genocide, we had 410 NGOs, international organizations, came to Rwanda. To do what? Yes, they support refugees, but on the backside, behind the pole, behind the video, behind the television, they are selling guns to this FDR in DRC. And you are telling me that as the president of that country, are you going to allow these NGOs to come in Rwanda because they are helping refugees? No, you have to take a measure, being bad or good, you kick them out. That's what we did as a Rwanda. Last but not least, let me finish so that Traore can learn to what happened. Rwanda is a fair and is a democratic country. Let's not just take the news from the social media and these so-called human rights activists. Let me give you an example. Today, we are having 120,000 refugees from DRC. Do you agree with me? But today, Rwanda has been accused, criticized by the Western, that Rwanda is supporting the M23 in DRC. That to solve the problem of those M23, those so-called, what is going on with DRC? They are killing anyone who is a Tutsi. They are trying to manipulate the human right. They are trying to manipulate the international arena that, no, Rwanda is supporting Congo because those are the Tutsi from Rwanda. No, those are Congolese. Go back to history. We are supporting,
okay.
we are trying to help those refugees who are Congolese, Rwandan, Kinyarwanda speaking, but they are Congolese. So are you telling me if the President Kagame is trying to tell the international that, please, enough is enough. We have 1,000 refugees here from Congo. Try to do something to take them back. We are not behind the M23. We are supporting we are trying to support the refugees who are here so that they can get a chance to go back to where they belong. And you know, this is a what you call a geopolitics thing of playing around. Last but not least, to compare with the Traore, to finish my case, my debate here is that, don't worry, I think Traore doesn't care. Being an influencer with Russia, I think that is the right thing he's doing with. Do you want him to be with French? For how many years the Francefa has been in Burkina Faso? Do you want him to always use the Francef by just being dictated on how to use the money in the sovereign country? No, we are not going back to 1962. We are not going back to 1960s, 50s. I think I will support Traore to make sure, of course, Ayesha, my sister Ayesha, I agree with you. Where is the consistency, the sustainability of making sure that what they are talking about has to be putting into action? This is what I'm worried about, this, our soul brothers and sisters there. If they can manage to do that, how they kick out the French, being Nigeria, I am looking at this the way I can say, I can define. Tomorrow, if I'll be happy to see Benin kick them out. I will be happy to see Gabo you are talking about. They are no longer argue with the French, but they come to the table as partners, not the controllers. Enough is enough.
I totally agree with that, but I think I have to refute some of what you've said, because you've pursued it from a very specific pro-Rwandese, pro-Kagame angle. So one, you talk about M23 not being armed by Rwanda, but there is audio-visual footage taken by more than one, television network that actually proves that the Rwandese army was acting in concert with M23. No, let me finish. Okay, no, let me finish, please. Hang on. Okay, you've also said that Mr. Kagame has jailed or exiled people like the Hotel Rwanda guy because he has told lies, etc., etc. But by the same token, people right here in South Africa, in Johannesburg, have been killed by the Kagame government because they have been in opposition to Mr. Kagame's administration. Again, there is proof of that. That's number two. Number three, you have said that Mr. Traore has done well in kicking out the French and the Americans. I happen to agree with you there. And you are saying that you would support him then jailing or exiling or opposing anybody who wants to bring the French or the US back. But by that very same token, there might be those within Burkina Faso, and I'm not saying they are right, who may not want his alliance with Russia and with Putin. And so there needs to be open political contestation is what I'm saying, which you, by the way, in the view of anybody looking at Rwanda from the outside who has visited Rwanda and knows that there isn't true political competition there. I'm not talking from social media. I'm not talking from the Western media. I have actually been there. I've experienced the paranoia, the suspicion, the lack of trust with which many people and many organizations are viewed. And that is not the recipe for true political competition. It is not the recipe for true human rights. I totally agree with you when you say we need to be anti-imperialists. I agree with that. But I'm saying that is firstly a coup d'etat, and secondly, shutting down political opposition and a free media environment and freedom of expression. Is that necessarily the best way to go about it?
Well, Sister Ayesha, can I just come in here, please, brother, Dr. Ismail and Sister Ayesha? I've got a comment come through, Sister Ayesha, and this is obviously directed at you, and I'd like you to obviously respond to this. The comment says that, sadly, Ayesha is simply repeating the U.S. Embassy narrative. Ayesha Kajee is anti-BRICS, pro-Western in a sophisticated manner. The core problem is super corrupt states of ECOWAS, Nigeria, Ghana, etc., that breeds disconnectedness and hence insurgency. So international community is to blame. With the economic and financial collapse of Nigeria and its manifold crises, the ECOWAS bloc is fast losing its legitimacy and effectiveness.
Well, Brother Inayet, I firstly said that ECOWAS has failed at the beginning of this program. I also don't know where they get pro-West anti-BRICS from, because I've been very, very vocal in my support for BRICS and very, very vocal in my critique of the West, particularly the United States, the United Kingdom, and France and Germany, among others, and the European Union bloc as a whole, NATO as a whole, etc. So I don't know where that sentiment, where that person gets that pro-Western anti-BRICS stands from. I've been a human rights activist all my life, since I was in high school, and I continue to be one. I was at a decoloniality conference, winter school, just this week at UKZN, which is part of the reason I'm down in UKZN. I was unable to attend it today due to a prior commitment, but it is very much a part of my research interest and very, very much a part of my political focus is the whole issue of decolonializing. And within that, key to that, fundamental to that, is anti-imperialism, including neo-imperialism. So I think whoever wrote that comment into you, Brother Inayet, really needs to go and do a bit of homework on me.
Well, thank you for that. No, but as I said, it was obviously came through to me, and I gave you the right to. Dr. Ismail, would you like to continue?
May I come in, please?
Yes, sure.
Yes, I appreciate what my sister Ayesha is talking about. I don't want to make it this as a Rwanda's debate. Let me making a focus on the Western, but of course we are learning from one another. Yeah. But before I go through to make sure what are the negative and the positive on side of Western, let me correct my sister Ayesha. Ayesha, let me tell you, it is two ways to deal with opposition. The opposition people you have in South Africa from Rwanda, if for information they want us to return back to ethnic group, which we cannot allow. You know, where the genocide against Tutsi which happened in Rwanda. Being some who are fighting on the side of Kagame, RPF, based on opposition, those who did not even were under MDR and so on. Let me tell you, anyone who want to bring back the genocide in Rwanda, Sister Ayesha, we will fight from the top to down, from jungle to where there is no negotiation about that, as far as genocide is concerned. But any opposition party who is ready to dialogue, so I think my government is ready to say, yes, let's sit and negotiate. This is what we are here. But come and criticize the Rwanda, and in the morning come and just, you have to hear what happened. Some of these, you have to hear what happened, this opposition part. Come with the guns, grenades, everywhere in Rwanda. You remember 1991, 1992. So that is what happened. Some were involved. But I agree with you 100% that as Rwanda is concerned, we need to sit and reconcile and make sure we have harmonized this kind of opposition. Having a position it's not a bad sign. It's a good sign of telling you, please, this is wrong. Let's change and build our nation together. We need to until the opposition can bring some positive thing. Again, I am not against the French or United States of America. You know, in Rwanda, we had a problem with the French involving 1994 genocide. You remember that one. But today, we are so fiancé. We are so together today. What I'm trying to say.
Perhaps too much,
we are now
sir.
with Macron. No, now we are. But what we want, as far as even what Traore has to do, we don't want this interference anymore. We want to have a partner. We need to partner. We need to have a bilateral cooperation, win-win situation. That the way we are dealing with China, the way we are dealing with Russia. Sister Ayesha, don't tell me that because I'm a friend to Russia, you have to be against me. That because of USA, Traore is going to be friend with Putin. What's wrong with the Putin? If Putin can turn up and, and empower Burkinabe to be where they are today, I think I will go with Russia. If we do understand each other, instead of coming and dictating me of what I have to do. I think this is what Traore is trying to tell those Westerners. Please, enough is enough.
Yeah,
So,
I'm totally with you on that. I'm totally with you on that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Putin. I'm saying, though, that Traore is going to face repercussions for that because the US and France will not like it.
Ayesha, no, what Traore has to do is to make sure saying that you are not working with France is not to be against France, because at the end you are going to be in trouble. So what you can do, what Traore is going to do, is to say, please, this is what we want. Come and we discuss. United States, this is what we want, but come and tell us what to do. We cannot allow such a thing. And this is what happened in Rwanda. And this is how you fight with imperialists we are talking about, even neo-imperialists. So come back again to the M23. My dear sister Ayesha, do you remember when the United States was looking to attack Iraq and Libya? Do you know how many pictures were shown that Iraq has nuclear weapons?
Weapons of mass destruction. Yes.
Come on,
yes.
Was Saddam has nuclear weapons? This is what these Western are trying to show, that Rwanda, through drone pictures, this is Rwanda. No, come on, nobody has shown. You know who is this DRC Congo? If they could manage to catch one soldier on the soil of DRC, I can guarantee you Rwanda will be accused, but they have never, no fact, looking at the picture, see it as the way it went with Iraq, with Saddam Hussein. See the way it went with the president in Libya. How many times they have been accused Gaddafi, just because Gaddafi was fighting for United African Union to unite together. No, this conspiracy cannot come to we Rwandese. We are not, and we will not involve in any sovereign country like a DRC. But accusing Rwanda because of scrapture of the pictures from anywhere drones? No, come on, we are mature, we are better than that. Sister Ayesha, if Rwanda want to attack Congo right now, we could attack Congo for quite long. But what do we have? What do we have to attack there? No, they are our brothers and sisters. But they cannot solve the problem through war, through conflict. The problem of DRC is going to be solved through dialogue, diplomacy, and kicking out Rwanda is not going to solve their problem. They have their internal and external. I think I have answered that one to make sure. What is happening with the Traore now? On the side of Traore, I agree with you that Traore is doing a marvelous job, linking with Russia, kicking out those whatever, French and others, but he has to be careful, my sister Ayesha, as you say. How? Number one, I am sure that on negative side, by linking up with this, when it comes to anyone who become friend with Russia, with China, is enemy of United States of America. You know very well that. And I think Traore is aware of that. This is going to increase the risk of insecurity. Why? Oh, absolutely. He has to be aware of that. And if you put embargo in Burkina Faso, Mali, and those, this region has been volatile in the region, has been even infested with the military groups. By the way, are you telling me the terrorists which are in Niger, in Sahel, are just terrorists? No, there are other hidden terrorist agenda who are behind it. What is happening there?
I don't disagree. I don't disagree.
I hope you understand what I'm talking about. Number two,
yes,
Traore need to be careful on a negative side, because a foreigner influence may be proved to be the key factor behind. So he needs to be careful of what is going on there. Why? Because wherever there is instability, this region will be in instability forever, as far as he has to play smartly with the USA, with France, even with other partner to those countries I'm talking about, European Union and so on. He doesn't have just to go there, put in beautiful speeches in front of Putin, and he says he's going to go free. No, he has to be careful on what he's doing. This is what I'm going to say. Last but not least, I think the door has now been opened when it comes to disintegration in economy, when ECOWAS. Sister Ayesha, agree with me. When it comes to this ECOWAS, we have been talking for quite long ECOWAS. We have been talking MIs. We have been talking, East African community. We have been talking region.
Oh, we've lost him. Well, actually, I think just obviously while Dr. Ismail is trying to connect, just one or 2 points that he had made with regard to the West African region, and possibly it could be headed for foreign imposed instability. And there is every likelihood of that's happening. But also in terms of some of the other countries, will they separate themselves from ECOWAS?
I think there's, it really depends on whether this alliance of the Sahel states holds and whether they actually do start to make good progress in the near term, in the short term. I think there's a strong possibility that other states then will dissociate from ECOWAS and come into this alliance. As I said, it depends on the track record in the short term, but I do believe that ECOWAS is now pretty much dead in the water because it has never really succeeded in its stated aims of regional integration on either the economic front or the political and peace and security front. Having said that, as Brother Ibrahim noted, this region is rife with instability. And part of that instability has certainly been fomented, at least part of it has been fomented by outside forces, certainly during the Cold War, but even in the post-Cold War era and in recent years. And in fact, at the conference I was at earlier this week, the daughter of the late great Frantz Fanon, Mireille Fanon, said that wherever you have recurring and long-term instability, look at what the strategic and economic situation is. Look at what resources are there to be extracted, or what the strategic benefit is for other geopolitical actors from outside that country or outside that region. And West Africa is a prime example of this, even including some of the giants in West Africa like Nigeria and Ghana. So, nobody, even South Africa down here in the south of the continent, we tend to be quite exceptionalist in some instances, Brother Inayet. But even we here are not immune to that kind of interference with the strategic and economic implications that come along with that. We have our share of resources down here, and we have yet to see those resources from our own land, from underneath our own land, be translated into the economic and political and social good of the majority of our population. We still live in a situation down here in South Africa where the majority of land and its wealth is in the hands of a minority, and at that, a hands of a racial minority.
Yes, Aisha. And also, Dr. Ismail, just looking at it purely from an economic perspective as well, and clearly there is going to be an economic impact for Niger, for Mali, for Burkina Faso as well. And we know the West, we know Western Europe, we know the corporate world. They are actually famous or infamous for being brutal in terms of getting back, in terms of a sort of revenge as well. And clearly, there could be certain risks, there could be certain dangers lurking in terms of some of these acts of revenge that could possibly result in disastrous consequences for these countries.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can you hear me very well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So when you look at, this is what I was talking about, when you look at economic perspective of the risk which comes with this kind of withdraw from ECOWAS or this Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso and so on. If you look at in terms of economic risk, I think the remaining countries, as Sister Ayesha was talking about, they even may impose taxes to the Burkinabe, to those Mali people. Also, in terms of economy, it means a lot of things. And it may even request a visa to these people so that they cannot be freely enter the way they were part of ECOWAS. This can also have a big impact on that when it comes to Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. As the sister Ayesha was talking about, I think these big countries may impose the sanctions. You have seen what happened with ECOWAS. So now, if Traore does not, put strategies to control how he's going to dissociate with this so-called Western, so they may pose embargo on him. So he has really to be careful on dealing with how he's going to deal with that issues. Last but not least, on the term of economic part of risk, I think so many countries may withdraw and may weaken the economic blocks of that regions. This country, almost 14 of them were being under France-CFA. So now they are trying to come out with their own blocks, as the sister Ayesha has pointed out, when it comes to the Alliance of Sahel State Defense Pact. So I think they have to really to put measures and powerful strategies so that they control over of what, so they can get momentum from other remaining countries to support them in what they are dealing with. Not only an economic part of it, because I look at also on a security part, the risks are huge. What is going on? I think Sister Ayesha has pointed out how these Burkina Faso, Mali are partnering, are having a tie with Russia. So when it comes to this, it has an impact on security and economy at the same time. Look at these wagon groups. What is they doing with African countries? This wagon from Russia. They can create a chaos by thinking that this wagon group are going to support him in what they are doing. So involving an influence of these military groups and the other state to come to your own country sometimes create an insecurity. So you think you are dealing with a terrorist, you think you are dealing with insurgents, sometimes you are creating something which can be risk on you. Last but not least, when it comes to insecurity, I think other countries may learn separate from themselves from this kind of influence. If not, this may even make other countries to make a coup. I think Sister Ayesha was talking about that as well. They may learn, yes, it's good to make a coup when you have a positive impact, when you make sure you put the people in front, or you make sure you have to change the country narrative. But putting just a coup because of your own interest, because you want to be a hero, because Burkina Faso has done that, myself, I want to do that. That is not the way to go. I think we agree with that, Sister Ayesha. So I think this anti-Western popularist may begin in different countries, which may undermine the African continent. Last but not least, when it comes to negative part of it as well, I think what I'm trying to say is that it is going to dissociate, to disintegrate from what you are built as a course into a chaotic area. So he need to be careful to listen, to make sure that major challenges are ahead of that. Yes, I support him 100%, but as our sister Ayesha was talking before, he need to deal with strategically, with the support from others. He need really to be wise and make sure whatever he does, it is on interest of the Burkinabe people, is on interest of the whole region, so that they can build themselves to put Burkina Faso where it want to be. Otherwise, doing that to get a fanatism, to be popularist, is going to end up in bad, that is not going to be good for Africa, is not going to be good for Burkina Faso. I think risks are huge. So it is how this leadership is going ready to make sure it is empower its own internal problem. Let's solve their internal problem, and the external so come together as one. Otherwise, are we still supporting him? Let's see what time it goes and what the future will decide for Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, including these Western countries. Otherwise, they still have externally a lot of challenge, internally a lot of, because so many criticism, so many complaint internally. You have seen so many, even recently they complained that he has been trying to control the communication within. So people are not free to use media. People are not free to use internal communication. So it has to be careful with that, because when you silence people with their will of, because the constitution, so people are free they are free and fair of talking whatever they want as human right is concerned. But of course, I'm not supporting that people should use whatever they want. So it has to control the communication, but in a wise way of making sure if this can make development of Burkina Faso people to be ahead. Otherwise, has to wait so many challenges ahead of him. Thank you so much, Wyden, and my sister Ayesha as well.
Yes. Yes. Ayesha, obviously looking at what, obviously we've been discussing in the last hour or so. And I think this actually begs a question, looking at the African continent. The scramble for Africa will continue all the time, whether it comes from Europe, whether it's going to come from the United States, whether it's going to come from China, Russia, whoever. And that scramble for Africa will continue irrespective of the leadership or the type of leadership that exists in Africa and in many of the countries. Whether we are talking of leadership through a coup, through a military coup, whether we're looking at dictatorship, whether we're looking at democracy, any type of governance, the interest in Africa will always be there. The scramble will always be there, and there will always be external interference in the affairs of the African continent. And again, ideally, what sort of leadership would suit Africa, would suit the African continent? Obviously, to ensure that with the scramble for the African continent, there is a win-win situation for the people of Africa, for the leadership, for the political establishment, and also for those who have interest, the external interests that continue to persist on the African continent.
I think, I would say, firstly, on the question of the type of leadership we need, or the type of governance we need, I'm a strong proponent of social democracy, but by social democracy, I mean true social democracy, where there is, real input from the grassroots, from communities into political structures, from the community level up until the national and even transnational levels. So I think that's important. I think, yes, we will continue to see a scramble for Africa. We will continue to see this, particularly so long as we regard ourselves purely as nation states that need to be protecting our national sovereignty. we really need to start to develop a new form of Pan-Africanism on this continent, I believe. And I think this alliance of Sahel states, while it arose out of a series of coups, shows some potential in that direction. Whether that potential will be realized, whether it will be allowed to be realized by those geopolitical players outside the continent and indeed within the continent, remains to be seen. What I think the leaders of the three countries need to do now, urgently, particularly Mr. Traore as the kind of de facto leader of the three, is to ensure the security situation in the region, in each of those three countries, respectively, but also between those three countries, to secure the borders, to ensure that there is relative peace and security, that people are not being threatened, be it from the inside or the outside. That's key. That's the first priority, I would say. The second priority would be to transition to some form of non-military power, some form of civilian power. It does not necessarily have to be at this stage what we have come to see as multi-party electoral democracy, but certainly some form of authority that is not purely military, but perhaps shared with the civil society as and where it exists in those three countries. Of course, as Brother Ismail has pointed out, that of course is in itself prone to outside interference through so-called NGOs, etc. And of course, we need to guard against that. But we really need to see a transition from pure military authority. Thirdly, the quicker that each of these three countries can establish a detente with their neighbors in the former ECOWAS, and the detente with major international players, including the ones they've been looking towards, including Russia, including China, but also including some of the Western countries. If they can come quickly to that situation of pointing out that there are mutual wins to be had in partnerships, as long as those partnerships do not become controlling ones on the part of the outside players, whether those outside players are from the East or the West, that will be the third priority, I think. And then in the medium term, to show real socio-political gains for the people in terms of standards of living, in terms of things like basic services such as education, such as healthcare, such as electricity reticulation, the provision of safe water, etc. If we can see that happen in the short to medium term, those 5 priorities, then I think we would be well on our way to the kind of social democracy we need in Africa and to the kind of Pan-Africanism we should be looking towards, a kind of African Union, not unlike the European Union, but with the shared interests of all African people at its core.
Yes, Ayesha. In fact, Dr. Ismail, perhaps you'd like to comment as well on the leadership in general.
Yes, can you hear me, please? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Absolutely, I agree with this, Sister Ayesha. I think the quality of leadership in Africa has been highlighted with the key reasons for the continent's stagnations. I think we are lacking the true leaders. When I'm putting the concept of leadership that Sister Ayesha was mentioned, I think we need a leader with a community base and a collectiveness, because those are the key of a leader who can serve the community. This is what Sister Ayesha was talking about, refer to. A selfless and honest and humble. Somebody who really understood that, who must be able to build consensus. Somebody with a visionary, which means a visionary leader, who come together to unite people instead of divisionalism and so on, to make sure they can come together with a common goal. I think this is what happened in Rwanda today after 1994 genocide against Tutsi, whereby the so-called three ethnic group given by colonization thing, they have come together. But of course, we still have so many challenges, but at least by coming together, we have built the Rwanda we want today. So unity coming to is something we can do. Ayesha, you agree with me that South Africa still faces so many challenges, so many problems, internal and external, but at least they have managed to make sure that black and white people could come and sit on the same table, even though there are a lot of challenges which are still ahead. But if they could not come with a reconciliation, unity reconciliation, we cannot talk about South Africa today or Rwanda. So this kind of unity with a common goal is the key to African people. So we need also to have what we call in leadership, virtuous leadership. What is going on with that? We need a leader who with trustfulness, a leader with humility, a leader with humanity, a leader who really understands and which is ready to fight corruption. Because so many leaders of ours in Africa, when they get this kind of money and so on, what they do is that to build the hotels, big houses in Western country in Europe, and just sit and tight, send their kids in Europe, whereby a poor African countries, a kid from Africa cannot, just they have to run away with these Mediterraneans. So we should make sure we come together to stop this kind of nonsense with some of our African leaders. So again, let me finish by saying that a leader who can create a trust, a leader who can set a vision, it's the leader that the people want in Africa. Sister Ayesha, this is what happened in Rwanda in this previous election when President Kagame got to 99-15. This is the trust. This is how Rwanda has shown this kind of election. So we are proud that after 1994, 30 years, that Rwanda has managed to where it is. But we know there is a long way to go. There is so many things we need to correct.
And you definitely need some succession planning and some youthfulness in your leadership.
Absolutely. There's so many we have to learn. There is so many challenges ahead of us, but trust, humility, humanity, and corruption, fighting against corruption, fighting against discrimination, we will have to deal with those kind of things. Thank you, Wadee, and my sister Ayesha as well. Those are the things, the true leader I'm looking for in the future of Africa.
Well, thank you very much for that, Dr. Ismail, and also to you, Ayesha. I think it's been most absorbing. It's a very, very interesting discussion, and I think we need to have a lot more of these discussions, now considering the fact that this is our continent. We are on the African continent, and sometimes we don't focus on what is taking place on our continent, and these are discussions that we will be hosting from time to time, and we do appreciate both of you taking time out this evening with us right here on Salam Media. All the best to both of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair for having me on. I would like to add that the two pitfalls to be avoided in leadership on our continent, and particularly right now in these three West African nations, I would say to the leaders there, the two things they should avoid at all costs is to be bought by greed. That's the one. And the second, to distance themselves from their people. That's the second.
May I intervene myself?
Sure, Dr. Ismail.
To complement what Ayesha is talking about, this leader should stop thinking that fighting imperialism is to fight anyone you don't talk in the same pot. No, that is wrong. Fighting imperialism is to look at the way, making strategies, way of dealing with and coming together. It's a win-win situation. Don't look at for popularist. Don't look at to become a hero. A hero will be made by the people. It is not you who are going to say, I am a hero because I'm fighting with the French, I'm fighting with the United States on others, because this is really wrong. they have to just make sure we are partner. Let's come together because the future we decide for Africa. I think our leader should focus on that. Otherwise, people are the one to decide our own future when it comes to African people. Thank you so much.
Well, shukran for that. Once again, Dr. Ismail Buchanan and Ayesha Kajee, all the best to both of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Well, that was Ayesha Kajee and Dr. Ismail Buchanan out of Rwanda with us this evening, and taking a look at some of the changing dynamics on the African continent from a political perspective. A large part of the focus was on West Africa, and also looking at some of the new breed of leadership that is emerging out of the African continent. But there was a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack, but also many lessons that one can actually take from the discussion that we had this evening. And it's been wonderful being in your company once again. And until we meet again, from myself and the team here at Salam Media, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.